Hi, I'm Vlad Bresnix, and welcome back to the BresnixCast, episode number 42. And it's Friday, so I'm thinking we'll do a Vlad solo show. And this is going to be, I think, part one of my never-ending series on me finding quasi-philosophical justifications for songs I don't like. So, if you don't like the negativity, if you don't like a good old-fashioned Scottish moan, it's not going to be for you. But I think a lot of people like a good old-fashioned Scottish moan. Or if you don't, I think you'll learn to love it. It's like something like, it's an acquired taste like broccoli. I think you'll get into it. But anyway, just before anyone, because I'm going to do a bit of slagging someone off in this episode, if anyone wants to bring the, oh, what have you ever done, Vlad argument, fuck all, really, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that if someone is some kind of like genius and then they put out something that is blatantly bad, then you can't just say it's not good, because it's just not good. You've just got to tell the truth sometimes, unfortunately. And, like, people have criticised art, you've had, like, literary criticism and all these kinds of things for, thousands of years. And that's what makes art get better. It doesn't matter who it is that's criticising it. If people criticise it, then the artist listens because they know they're doing something wrong. And that helps them. So that was my little justification, because there should be no sacred cows when it comes to art, in my opinion, So anyway, everyone likes a good moan, and you're going to get a damn good one. So, I will be originally directing my crippling rage against none other than, yes, the man, John Lennon. And I'm going to focus on his so-called masterpiece, Imagine. And look, I like the Beatles as much as anyone else. The Beatles, well, incredible albums, like Revolver was an absolutely brilliant album, and like everyone likes Sgt. Pepper's and all that kind of thing. They were experimenting, they were moving music forward, and they were really interesting at one time. Unfortunately, as solo artists, I found them to be, well, let's just say lacking. And I know I'm not the only one with that viewpoint. You know what I mean? I may actually do a whole show on the Beatles at one point, but to be honest, I think we should just stick to John Lennon and Imagine for the purposes of this show. We don't want it to go on forever. We'll get way too bogged down. So why I started off with Imagine was because Imagine's become one of these like super iconic songs. You hear it sung at like, candlelight vigils and weddings and funerals. And, obviously whenever the mainstream media needs to make a really, a sad point about something that's really sad and poignant and all the rest of it. So, and everyone knows it, because it comes up all the time for, some reasons I've mentioned and various other reasons. And it's interesting because the subconscious is it's an insane thing, because it takes in so much that you don't realize. Take even like, we don't even need to go to things like psychological studies or anything like that. Take something in popular entertainment like a Dead and Brown special, and he can show you in an entertainment context that people retain images and ideas in their subconscious that they weren't even aware of it. There was things maybe in the room, things that they noticed subconsciously, things they took in subconsciously, and they didn't even realize it. And it's the same with movies and musics and novels and art and all this kind of thing. A lot of the time there is this stuff that your subconscious takes in that you don't consciously think about. Maybe sometimes you realize later, but not always. So like that's kind of like, I suppose, one of the reasons why I think, because John Lennon was wrong, I think that it's dangerous because a lot of people like subconsciously like imbibe this narrative of like, oh man, if we did this and we did that and all the rest of it, we would all live in peace. And to be honest, I think it's quite naive, but we'll get into it, So let me just start by saying that, like, look, I don't think John Lennon was by any means like a stupid man. He was clearly intelligent, very, very talented, and you got to remember environment is so important. By the time he was writing Imagine, he was hanging out in circles with a lot of people who thought like him. A lot of the hippie types and stuff like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if you could describe it as like a left wing echo chamber. I wasn't there. I'm just a bit of speculation on my part, but a lot of people tend to go into like echo chambers. That just sort of seems to happen sometimes. Um, and the other thing is, I think one of the things that hooks people into Imagine is like the overall tone sounds so nice. I mean, it sounds lovely, doesn't it? I mean, like everything just sounds like we can all just live in peace and we'll all be happy, and that's kind of what everyone wants deep down. But I just think the ideas like contained in it are flawed, basically. I mean, I don't think that the utopia that John imagined will like come about simply by attacking things he doesn't like, which is, in my view, basically what he does in the song. Like, so that being said, like, let me give you some examples. Let's just go through all the lyrics and we'll explain it. So, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Now, there's actually quite a lot in that bit, to be honest. I kind of see the no heaven and hell bit as introducing very, very early this kind of libertine idea. You'll see it, I'll point it out again, as we go on. But it's this kind of immorality thing, this kind of like, there's no one's going to judge you, no one's going to reward you, so, why bother, and in a way, it's quite nihilistic, even these people talk about morals and peace and love and stuff like that. It's just, I find statements like that to be, quite nihilistic, and I don't know, it's interesting, like, I have a different conception of heaven and hell, and I know a lot of, like, other religions do, more of a realm you're in as you're traveling through like something else on a kind of like wheel of samsara or something. But again, that's another show. We won't get to it right now. Um, yeah, and I think that these lines just led to like the libertine lifestyle that is that seemed to be promoted. That John seemed to lead. No heaven, no hell, no judgment, no rules to follow, do life as you like, you know, and we will see it again as we go on. So, the other part of this first little section is imagine all the people living for today line. Now, this is very different than something like, say, the Beatles travel to India and things like that. And this is very different than, say, the Buddhist line of like, you know, there's no past and there's no future because they're just mental abstractions. Because nothing ever happened in the past. If you're remembering something that happened in the past, when it actually happened, it was the present, it was the now. You're just remembering it in the past. That's just an echo of something that happened. And it's the same with the future. Nothing ever happened in the future. You might anticipate something that's going to happen, but when it actually does happen, it's the present, it's the now. So like the Buddhists would talk about, and a lot of other religious sects too, would talk about how it's the eternal now, it's always now. you know, and I mean, like, it doesn't mean you can't plan for the future or something like that, because I mean, when you're planning for the future, you're planning now. If I'm going to build a table and I decide I'm going to go out and buy wood now, I'm buying wood now. I'm doing something now in the present moment for the future when I build the table again in the present moment. So you kind of see what I mean. It's the same with memories as well. I mean, you're living something in the present that happened in the past. So basically, what I'm saying is past and future mental abstractions, all there ever is, all you ever experience is a constant present moment. And this idea is also kind of leaked into modern kind of new age sort of pop culture stuff. Like, I'm thinking stuff like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, and I'm sure there's other ones you can think of as well. I mean, it's been an idea that's been around for a long time. However, you know, John Lennon saying, like, imagine all the people living for today, like, being aware that you're living in an eternal now, and past and future, like I just said, are mental abstractions, is not the same as living for today. Like, living for today is, I don't know, it's more of a hedonistic, again, we're back to the hedonism kind of lifestyle, because, I mean, you're basically saying, I mean, like, if you if you're living for today, you're basically talking about no tomorrow. And if you're talking about no tomorrow, you're going to live your life completely differently. I mean, if I was just living purely for today, I mean, would I be going into work? Of course I wouldn't. Like, why would I be doing that? Do you know what I mean? I mean, living for today, even in our language and like our Western culture, living for today has always been like tied to hedonism, you know? And the thing is, like, nothing would get done either if everyone lived for today. I mean, nobody's going to work. A lot of people would live probably more dangerously and stuff like that, because they would go, well, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, I'm only just living for right now, just living for today, and I think, something like that, it would just, I mean, come on, it's just going to make society eventually break down, I think, so, like, yeah, I don't think that the living for today thing is a good idea. And I mean, it reminds me of, like, if you take like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff like that. Um, they talk about keeping it in the day, but when you're in Alcoholics Anonymous and you talk about keeping it in the day, it means like, oh, don't worry about, oh, my Christmas is 2 weeks away. Am I going to be tempted to drink then, or something like that? It means you focus on, am I going to drink today? As long as I don't drink today, I'll be okay. So again, but if you went in Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and someone sat up there and were like, guys, just live for today. It's cool, man. Just live for today. What do you think would happen? Probably all hell would break loose. So, like, that's another thing you've got to understand. Living for today is something very different, and something very dangerous, John. I don't know where you are, but I kind of hope you're listening. I mean, to sum that up, living for today implies that there's nothing tomorrow, there's no consequences, no regret, no planning necessary. I mean, living every day, if it was your last, if you're anything like me anyway, then that would just be very, very dangerous. And again, libertine philosophy, and we're noticing that quite a lot in this song. I'm not really feeling a lot of conviction in a lot of way. I'm feeling a lot of hedonism, a lot of like, why can't we do what we like? And not necessarily in a libertarian way, more in a, let's just, I don't even know. This is the thing about Imagine. I don't even know if he wants to tear everything down. He never talks about tearing everything down. It's more like, just imagine if this wasn't here in the first place. But then, how could we even do that? Because, like, how could we even conceptualize? What, would there just be nothing? Like, it's, John, you're confusing me. Oh, John. Anyway, let's continue. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living in peace. Again, he's got all this kind of like, people who just live in peace if da happens. I think it seems a bit of a stretch to assume that if we got rid of countries, then people would just live in peace. Because there was times in history when there weren't countries and people didn't really live in peace. I mean, like, you could make the strong case that the opposite, is the case. Now, I'm not a lover of the state. Let's just put my political views that way. But even like, even if we just did this as a thought experiment, if we imagined that there had never been any countries at all, I just can't imagine how human beings would all instinctually cooperate and, not eventually start causing conflict over, territory and, over like status and, things like this. It just seems part of the human condition. And I know that sounds kind of like, oh man, it's depressing. And it is maybe a little bit. But, let's keep with the realism here, because I think if we're going to make the world better, we can't be lying about what's actually happening and what human nature is actually like. We have to understand that first. And only when we understand that can we move forward. That is my total belief. Total belief. But anyway, so I don't think just getting rid of countries is going to help. Not at all. Also, he sneaks in the religion thing again. You just see him in No Religion too. There was heaven and hell at the start of the song, and then there's the wee No Religion too bit. And I'm not particularly religious in any kind of conventional sense. I would consider myself spiritual, but I mean, actually, I can say that I do respect what religion kind of was. I think, like religion originally had all these stories and things like that because, there was a lot of oral tradition. Not a lot of people could, write a long time ago. So by encoding moral messages in certain stories, that helped. It helped a lot of people, like understand things in a way and to be able to hand them down in an interesting way rather than just like reading off all the rules. So I get that kind of thing. But the thing is, like he's John Lennon saying, let's just get rid of no religion too. But the energy, the faith that people put into religion, they'll put it somewhere else. They will. I mean, we saw in the Soviet Union that was, really atheist. People put all this faith, people put all this religious fervor. Not everyone, obviously, but a vast amount of people, into the state. So we see that. And I think as well it's because for many people, believing in and being part of something larger than themselves is very, very attractive because it makes them part of a grand purpose in life. It makes them more than, just a pleb, just a serf, just a shit buncher. It makes them something, part of something that is so much bigger and so much more powerful than they could ever be. And I think people always do that. And I think if you don't have religion, they'll find something else. It'll be something else, and people will put their energy behind that, the same way they did in the church previously. And I don't know, I think listening to Imagine and stuff like that and I've talked to older guys who still think it's like, oh, imagine, man, imagine that was the world and, this kind of thing. But it seems like so many of these 60s hippies wanted a world that humanity wasn't and still isn't ready for. It would take some, well, I don't know, some crazy massive shift in consciousness for humans to somehow change the basic nature that they've had for thousands and thousands of years. And that involves like, conflict and violence and, vying for status and, land and all the rest of it. I mean, most people don't act and think like 1960s hippies. It's just a fact. I mean, you do have throwbacks and modern versions these days, younger people who, kind of adopt the whole program still. But the drive that moved to like the '60s anti-war era, the peace movement, it's never what it was, and it's never going to be what it was. And different people have different views on, what was accomplished by it or what wasn't accomplished by it. But I think, John Lennon's view is, I know it's just a pop song, that people can listen to and blah blah blah. But I really believe that when you make any art, it's down to criticism and interpretation, by lots of people. And this has just been like my interpretation of it, from hearing it from years and years. And I can't help but think that there was once an optimism among those young people in the '60s. And I'll be honest, even as a teenager, even though I'm only like 30, so I obviously wasn't even alive in like the '70s or the '60s, but I used to listen to a lot of '60s and '70s music. I found it very inspiring. I really liked it and stuff like that. And, I got really, really deep into it, read a lot about it, just loved all that kind of thing. And I like the idea of the optimism, among that generation. But I mean, it slowly decomposed over the years, and it just became, more cynical, as the generation on the rise, as my millennial generation, we're extremely, extremely cynical. Generation X as well, above us, extremely cynical. And, I just wonder what it was like to have that optimism. It would have been very interesting. But like I said, I think that unfortunately, John, your premises were wrong. I've never really liked Imagine. I'm sorry. Um, but I mean, there is a bit more of this as well. I mean, like, he talks about he's a dreamer, he's not the only one. Someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Again, it's this whole globalist thing. We'll all hold hands around the world and be one people. Great idea. Is it going to happen? I don't really know. I mean, actually, like he says, join us. It's kind of like a horror film, isn't it? Maybe someday you will join us. Join us. um, I think, I don't know. I think the only thing about like in the world we as one, I think the only way the world would unite is was it the old Reagan thing where he said like, if aliens came down and attacked us, then we would all unite or something like that. But until that happens, my breath will be held. And I know I'm not trying to be terribly dour and depressing, it's just comes out that way. But don't worry, we're nearly finished. So, imagine, we're back to quoting John here. Imagine no possessions, I wonder if you can. No greed or hunger, a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. So, I mean, John's in full zeitgeist mode. I don't know if you've seen the Zeitgeist movie. You can probably see it on, it's probably on YouTube, or I think it's on Netflix as well. Well, he definitely died before it came out, but I think he might have been quite interested in, Zeitgeist and the Venus Project in general. That would be interesting. Look, he's talking about like, sharing everything and no possessions, and what do you do with all your stuff? Do people just take your stuff off you, and the other thing is, I don't know if you noticed this, but see when someone owns something, I mean, not always, but generally most of the time when someone owns something, they will take better care of it than something they don't own. An example I think of is like works vans, like versus someone's private car. I mean, they will drive the work van one way and their own car a completely different way. And I'm not saying everyone, but I'm saying that kind of stuff does happen. This whole brotherhood of man idea is great, but there is so many divisions and things that are still, unfortunately, keeping us apart. And, I'm not about to start giving answers because I don't know. I'm just criticising John Lennon because I don't like Imagine. That's just what I do. Look, again, I think it's the whole song's a nice idea, but the music I find mundane, and it's against our basic nature as human beings. Or like it, and you like it or not, there doesn't seem to be any signs that I can see of that changing. But I mean, I suppose, does that even matter? I mean, was John Lennon wrong, even if he knew intellectually that this utopia of his was never going to happen? Was he wrong to write down like just like his dream of what he hoped would happen one day? No, not necessarily. Like I said, I wish the music wasn't as mundane, but I think he was right to paint out a vision, a beautiful vision, but I just think the causes he pointed to were erroneous and just weren't right. And conflict, like I said, people vying for territory and resources, have always shaped the world. And I mean, who knows what's going to change that? I certainly don't. I would like to see it change, but I've got no idea. But anyway, we're slagging off John Lennon. We have had so many people like John, people who are preaching peace, people who talked about a different way for humanity. And from Jesus to John Lennon, they normally get killed. So, I think even though he did get killed, he did make an impact on people. Like I said, I just wish that John Lennon had thrown some real good philosophy in there and made it poetic at the same time. I don't really care for his or Paul McCartney's solo stuff. Thought the Beatles were awesome, great music, and I just thought they were better together, if I'm perfectly honest. So, I don't know if a shift in consciousness is possible in humanity that could give us such a utopia. I mean, I would like to think that's a possibility, but to be honest, I'm not. I don't even know how that would happen. I've not even got a clue. Even sometimes, and some people in the '60s thought they were on the brink of changing the world, but it's funny how the system bites back, and I suppose it always will. So, you might think that I'm taking this too seriously. I'm taking too much of a deep dive into what is ostensibly just a nice little John Lennon song. But like I said, this is part one of a never-ending series, and it will keep happening. And anyway, I don't like that song. So I have been Vlad Bresnix. Thank you so much for listening to the BresnixCast. You can catch me at bresnix.com, bresnix.com, if I can actually talk properly. You can also follow me on Twitter at Vladimir Bresnix. I have an album out. Search Bresnix or Vladimir Bresnix and you'll find it. It is on all your favourite streaming platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, Google, the whole shebang, Deezer, Tidal, everything. Give it a listen, see what you think. Also, there's a video version of this going out, so give me a look on YouTube. For some reason on YouTube I'm not doing that great, so I could do with the subs, I could do with the views. So thanks so much for listening. I don't even know, usually I play a song at the end, but obviously I'm kind of not going to play Imagine just because of someone being litigious, so we'll just end with a little bit of tunage. What we'll do is we'll put a demo song of mine. This song is called Empty Grinders. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.